You ever get left with something so pathetic it feels like a joke? Like they wrapped up your whole worth in a broken object and handed it to you with a smile? That's what happened to me. My name's Victor Rivas. I'm 39, work full-time repairing industrial AC systems in Tucson, Arizona. I rent a small one-bedroom near the freeway and drive a beat-up Ford Ranger with more rust than paint. My life's not glamorous, but I've always kept my head down, paid my bills, and stayed out of drama. But last spring, everything I thought I knew about family cracked wide open. It started when my mom and dad died in a rollover on Route 77. It was brutal. A semi clipped them during a monsoon storm. By the time I got the call, they were already gone. I remember standing in that sterile hospital hallway, hands trembling, Mia, my girlfriend at the time, rubbing my back while I stared at the floor like a little kid who didn't understand what just happened. Then came the will. My younger sister Sabrina showed up to the attorney's office like she was walking into a business meeting. Black dress, heels, no tears. She's 34, successful, charming, and runs the Martinez family restaurant empire like a queen. Everyone in Tucson knows her name. Our parents were proud of her, always saying she had the fire and the vision. Me, I was the good son. The quiet one. The one who fixed their AC, trimmed their hedges, brought groceries without being asked. So when the lawyer read the will, I expected things to be simple. Fair. But here's what I got. To Sabrina Rivas, we leave the entirety of Martinez Cocina, all accounts, property, and business rights. To Victor Rivas, we leave the 1986 delivery van, formerly used by Alejandro Martinez, with all its contents. That was it. A van. An old, moldy van parked behind the catering kitchen. Tires flat, windows fogged up with dirt, and a busted taillight held together by duct tape. Sabrina didn't even pretend to be surprised. She gave me this little smirk, like, well, what did you expect? Then she patted my arm and said, "It's symbolic, Vic. Grandpa loved that van. Maybe it's time you found something meaningful to do with your life." Mia was fuming on the drive home. "I can't believe you're just okay with this," she said, her voice shaking. "What do you want me to do, sue her?" I muttered. "No, but at least say something. Stand up for yourself. You always just let it happen." That night, Mia packed a duffel bag and left. No yelling, no slamming doors, just a long stare and then silence. I didn't chase her. The next morning, I went to the back lot behind the restaurant. The van sat under a mesquite tree, covered in bird crap and dead leaves. I opened the door and the smell hit me. Gasoline, mildew, and something sour, like old onions. There was a crate of expired hot sauce bottles in the back and a dusty Polaroid of my grandfather taped to the glove compartment. I don't know why, but I sat in that driver's seat for over an hour. Just sat there. No music. No phone. Just the creaking of the wind and the hum of the freeway a mile off. Maybe it was grief, or shame, or both. Because no matter how I spun it, my parents left me junk. A broken van. And it felt like their final verdict on my life, that I wasn't worth the house, the business, or even a decent explanation. But then something happened. As I shifted in the seat, I heard a clunk underneath. Something metal, not part of the chassis. I got out, crouched beside the van, and noticed a small panel under the rear seat. Looked like it had been tampered with. Scratched around the edges like someone had pried it open before. I grabbed my toolbox, popped the panel loose, and pulled out a thick canvas-wrapped bundle. It was heavy, almost too heavy for one hand. Inside? Old ledgers, yellowed letters, and a manila envelope stamped with a red wax seal I didn't recognize. But what made my throat tighten, what made my hands go numb, was the first line written on a folded paper on top. "If you're reading this, it means they chose to forget what I tried to protect." I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the torn passenger seat of that van with the canvas bundle in my lap, staring at the red wax seal like it might catch fire if I blinked. My hands were shaking, but it wasn't fear. It was something deeper, like the ground under everything I thought I knew was starting to shift. I broke the seal just after midnight. Inside were old, brittle pages. Typed, handwritten, even some copied receipts. Most of it was in Spanish, my grandfather's language, the one my parents barely spoke and Sabrina never bothered to learn. The first letter was from 1972, addressed to my grandfather Alejandro from someone named Luis Romero. It talked about the original Martinez Casina, how it was built from scratch by two families, ours and the Romeros. It wasn't a secret partnership. It was a handshake deal between brothers-in-law. Equal shares, equal credit. Until it wasn't. There were photos, too. Black and white snapshots of two men, Alejandro and Luis, standing shoulder to shoulder in front of the first restaurant, a dusty little joint off the highway. One photo showed them holding a hand-painted sign that read, La Cocina de Dos Familias, the kitchen of two families. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. We were taught that our grandfather built the business alone, through grit and hard work. That's what Sabrina always bragged about on the company's website, in magazine interviews. Hell, even in her TED Talk. The Riva's legacy of flavor. Legacy, my ass. There were receipts, too, documenting the split. Luis had sold his half to Alejandro under pressure during a family feud after a fire burned down their first location. But one thing stood out. A final handwritten note from Luis, dated 1984. I was never paid what was promised. You took everything, Alejandro. But someday, your blood will have to answer for mine. I must have read that line 10 times. It didn't make sense. Alejandro died with a saint's image in our family. My parents worshipped him. Sabrina used his name to brand spice bottles and line cookbooks. There was even a mural of him downtown. But here in my hands was a completely different man. A man who screwed over his partner. A man who rewrote history. I wanted to believe it wasn't true. That maybe Luis was bitter. That maybe it was just family drama that got blown out of proportion. But I couldn't shake this feeling in my chest. Like I was standing inside a lie that had shaped my whole life. I drove to my apartment at sunrise, the bundle tucked under my jacket like a stolen artifact. I tried calling Sabrina twice, straight to voicemail, so I texted her. We need to talk. It's about Grandpa, about the van. She didn't reply. I spent the rest of the day at my tiny kitchen table with a pot of black coffee and my old college Spanish dictionary. I translated every letter, every memo. There was even a lease document for the original restaurant property, with Luis Romero's name on it as co-signer. Around 6 p.m., there was a knock at the door. It wasn't Sabrina. It was Mia. I hadn't seen her since the night she walked out. She looked tired, like she hadn't been sleeping much either. She didn't say anything right away, just stepped inside, sat down at the table and looked at the papers. I talked to my dad, she finally said. He used to do handyman work for your family back in the 90s. He told me something last night. I waited, heart pounding. He said there was a safe in your parents' attic, behind the insulation. He helped install it years ago. Said it was hidden so well he forgot about it until he saw Sabrina on the news last week bragging about the restaurant's origins. I stared at her, unable to speak. Mia leaned in. He thinks whatever's in there is worse than what you just found. I didn't sleep. Again. I laid on the couch with that damn sentence echoing in my head. He thinks whatever's in there is worse than what you just found. Mia fell asleep around 2 a.m. in the recliner across from me, arms crossed, shoes still on. She looked like a soldier taking a nap in a war zone. And in a way, I guess that's what we were. Caught in a quiet war that had been buried under layers of family charm and restaurant lighting for decades. By sunrise, I had the van gassed up and pointed toward my parents' old house. It was technically Sabrina's now, part of the will, but the locks hadn't been changed yet. And I still had a key. I half expected a security alarm to go off when I slipped in through the side door. Nothing. Just the faint hum of the fridge and the smell of furniture polish. Everything looked exactly the same as when I was a kid. The ceramic angel on the mantel. The framed school photo of Sabrina in her cheerleading uniform. The wooden spoon on the wall that Mom used to tap the counter with when we were being too loud. I stood in the hallway staring up at the ceiling like it might swallow me whole. The attic was never finished. Just beams, dust, and insulation. I hadn't been up there since I was maybe 12, chasing a cat that had gotten stuck. But I remembered how cold it felt, even in July. Like the air had nowhere to go. I pulled down the ladder and climbed up slowly, flashlight in hand. My knees popped with every step. At first, I didn't see anything. Just cobwebs, boxes of old Christmas decorations, and a pile of forgotten junk. But then I spotted it. One side of the far wall looked off, like the insulation had been sliced and tucked back in, not sealed. I walked over, heart pounding, and pulled at the edge. Underneath was a metal panel, a keypad. No handle, no keyhole. I froze. This wasn't just some file safe from Office Depot. This was custom built, hidden, protected. I stepped back, trying to think. And then it hit me. My parents' wedding anniversary, April 12th, 1979. I typed in 041279. Click. The door creaked open with a soft hiss, and inside was a second layer. A wooden box, sealed shut with nails. I pried it open with a crowbar I found near the HVAC unit. And what was inside? It wasn't ledgers. It wasn't legal documents. It was tapes, videotapes, VHS, all labeled with dates spanning over 15 years. And one unlabeled, just black plastic and dust. There was also a stack of photos, some burned at the corners, a few still in their original envelopes. One of them dropped onto the floor, and when I picked it up, I felt my stomach twist. It was my grandfather, but not the version on the mural. He was younger, angry-looking, standing in front of a truck with someone beside him. A man whose face had been scratched out in ink, over and over until the paper tore. I gathered everything and got the hell out. Back at my apartment, I dusted off my old VCR from college, somehow still working, and popped in the unlabeled tape. Static, then a flicker, then a recording started. Shaky, like someone filming with trembling hands. I saw my father. He was in the kitchen of the original restaurant, late at night, alone. He opened a drawer, pulled out an envelope, and started counting cash. A lot of it. Then came another man. The camera jerked. There was yelling, shoving. The picture cut out, came back blurry. And then a scream. The video ended. I sat there, shaking. The timestamp on the video? June 4th, 1990. The night Luis Romero disappeared. The man they told everyone just left town in shame. After the video ended, I just sat there, frozen. My heart was pounding so loud I swear I could hear it echo in the walls. I played the tape back again, slower this time, pausing at every frame. There was no blood, no clear violence. But the scream? The way the screen cut to black after it? It was enough. And the date, June 4th, 1990, wasn't just any day. It was the night my parents had thrown a staff appreciation dinner. I remember it. I was 5. I fell asleep under the buffet table while adults drank and laughed. That was the night Luis Romero disappeared without a goodbye, without even packing his things. Everything I thought I knew wasn't real. The man I called Dad? He'd covered something up, maybe worse. And my sister? She had to know. But before I did anything, I needed someone to tell me I wasn't losing my mind. So I drove back to see Daniel Whitehorse, the man my grandfather had ousted all those years ago, the co-founder, the original chef, the one they never mentioned. When I showed him the letters and the photo with Luis's face scratched out, he didn't say a word for a full minute. Just stared at it like someone had stabbed him in the chest. Then he looked up at me, eyes wet. "I always knew something happened to Luis," he whispered. "They said he ran off, but he loved that kitchen too damn much to just disappear." He reached under his table and pulled out a notebook, yellowed and cracked. Inside were sketches, menu ideas, notes about sauces, spices. And in the corner of one page, Luis plus Daniel equals la cocina de dos familias. Everything in here, Daniel said, tapping the notebook, was stolen. And now they've built an empire on lies. That's when I felt it. Not fear, not grief, but fire. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid to make noise. I called Mia, told her everything, and together we started making copies of the letters, the receipts, the tape. I uploaded the video, privately, for a lawyer friend of hers to review. He nearly dropped his phone after watching it. "This isn't just a moral mess, Victor," he said. "This could be criminal." But I didn't go to the cops. Not yet. Because I wanted Sabrina to see it first. So I invited her to lunch. Neutral ground, some cafe in Midtown. She came in late, sunglasses on, phone in hand, already annoyed. "Make it quick," she said, not even looking up. "I have a donor meeting at 2. I slid a manila envelope across the table. "Open it." She glanced inside, saw the photo. The lease, a printout of a still from the VHS tape. Her face didn't move, but her hands twitched. "Where'd you get this?" she asked, voice low. I leaned forward. "You always said I was weak, Sabrina. Quiet, forgettable, but you forgot something important. I listen, I remember, and I keep everything." She stood up, knocking over her iced tea. Her face was pale now. "You don't know what you're doing," she hissed. "You're going to ruin everything." "No," I said calmly, wiping my hands. "I'm just setting the record straight." Then I left. But here's the part I didn't expect. That night, I got a call from an unknown number. A woman's voice came through. Older, heavy with emotion. "Victor? My name is Maria Romero. Luis was my father." I stopped breathing. She continued, voice shaking. "I've seen the video. I've seen the letters, and I need to tell you something." "What?" I whispered. There was a pause. "Your father and my father were half-brothers." I blinked, heart slamming into my ribs. "What?" "Luis was the firstborn, but your grandfather erased him from the family line because he married an indigenous woman. That's why they hid him. That's why he never got credit. You're not just Victor Rivas. You're Victor Romero. And you've got more claim to that restaurant than anyone in your family ever did." I must have sat there with the phone pressed to my ear for 5 full minutes after Maria hung up. Luis Romero, my biological uncle, my blood, the man my grandfather erased. And now, everything I'd just been through. It wasn't just about some old restaurant or a family feud over inheritance. It was about a legacy that had been deliberately stolen, scrubbed from the history books and replaced with a shiny lie. And they'd tried to pass that lie down to me like a family heirloom. Well, I wasn't taking it. The next morning, I called Daniel and told him everything. He didn't say much, just asked if I was ready. I told him I wasn't sure, but I knew I couldn't stay quiet any longer. Together, we scheduled a press event. Nothing fancy, just a community gathering in front of the original Martinez Cocina location. Daniel reached out to former staff. Maria flew in from Santa Fe. And Mia, God bless her, helped coordinate the whole thing. When the day came, it was hotter than hell. I stood under that sun in a plain black shirt, holding a microphone with shaking hands, staring out at a crowd of 50, maybe 60 neighbors, old customers, and reporters. I told them everything. About Luis, about the stolen partnership, about the tape, about the hidden attic and the broken silence. I played the video on a mounted screen, and the moment that scream echoed out across the crowd, a heavy hush fell over everyone. Sabrina didn't show up, but her lawyer did. The man stood stiff as a board near the back, sunglasses on, arms crossed. I didn't care. I wasn't afraid of legal threats anymore. Because this wasn't just a story. This was evidence. The public response was wildfire. By nightfall, local news had picked it up. By the next morning, 3 food blogs were sharing it nationwide. Hashtags started trending. And then came the lawsuit. From Maria and her siblings, co-filed with Daniel and their lawyer, petitioning for legal recognition of Luis Romero's founding role and rightful estate share. It hit the Rivas brand like a grenade. Sponsorships dropped. Deals paused. And for the first time in her life, Sabrina had to answer for something. I never went to the trial. Didn't need to. I'd said what I needed to say. A few weeks later, I got a certified letter. Inside was a single document. Sabrina had formally resigned from Martinez Cocina's leadership board. No apology. No call. Just her signature on the dotted line and a short line that read, "Effective immediately." I stood there in my living room, paper in hand, and let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding for 30 years. 2 months later, Daniel and I reopened the original restaurant, under its first rightful name, La Cocina de Dos Familias. We didn't have fancy investors or marketing campaigns, but we had truth. And we had soul. Maria's kids sent us recipes Luis had been working on before he disappeared. We painted his face back onto the mural that once only showed Alejandro. And every Saturday, we host memory meals where families can sit down, eat, and share stories of their own heritage. Whatever that looks like. And me? I stopped trying to be invisible. Stopped hiding behind the title of quiet older brother or good son. I'm still Victor Rivas on paper. But in my heart, and in that kitchen, I'm Victor Romero. People like to say the past is the past. But it's not. Not when it's buried under lies and dressed up as legacy. You can't really move forward until you know where you come from. And who paid the price for you to get there. If you've ever felt erased, unseen, or silenced, I hope you'll drop a comment below. I read every story. And if this hit home for you, maybe consider subscribing. This space is for us. All of us who were told to stay quiet and decided, no more. Thanks for listening. Really.